Looking to learn life lessons without going through the experience? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Hidden Struggles with your host, Lady C.
I have a special guest with me. And what makes this guest so special is she is my cousin. And I never would have thought that I would have her on my platform. So I would like to introduce Chef Nellie.
Welcome. Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come out on our platform and tell your story. And of course, your mother and I are first cousins. So our mothers are sisters. So of course, I wasn't around when you were being reared in this religion. So you want to kind of tell, everybody in the audience how you became part of this religion.
So both of my parents, they weren't originally witnesses, but they became into the religion, I want to say somewhere around in the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s. And then so I was just born and raised into it. I don't really remember much, of the beginning of it. But as I got older, then I kind of comprehended a little bit more. But yeah, so I was born and raised into it. My father was an elder of the congregation. So there was a lot more responsibility there too, with our family. And so from there, yeah, he was an elder, and all of our families were kind of in the community as well too. So that was nice. That was comforting. I'm not sure for other people, but for me, that was slightly comforting knowing I know people around here. So I'm born into it, but I'm not being completely thrown in with a bunch of strangers. So that was nice.
Right. But what were your challenges when you were growing up in the religion?
So there were so many different challenges. But for me personally, I felt a struggle of finding where I fit in this congregation, because the one that we were in, there weren't a lot of children my age when we first started out. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason I enjoyed having us all being there, because, okay, I got my cousin over here, a family member over here. But that was my first beginning struggle getting in there, is that I was younger. I wasn't really fitting in with anyone. I didn't know where I really belong. So initially, that feeling of not knowing where to belong, and I'm in a religion, like I should feel comforted, like, okay, we're good. So that kind of started off first, is that beginning struggle, is finding where I fit in. And then a lot of the other struggles was just trying to balance, or figuring out actually how to balance your regular life with your religious life, because in a sense they're kind of different, and luckily I was brought up where we had that balance of seeing, okay, what the outside world is like, but we're giving you limitations. We're not saying we're going to do all this and that, but so I got a little bit of balance, but it just seemed like so many things were contradicting in that process. So that was also a struggle too.
Right. Now, you know what? See, now being that we were both in the same congregation at different times, I had the same problem you had. But one of the things I remember is that we have a lot of family members that are not Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was able to hang around with those family members. How about you? Were you hanging around our family that wasn't witnesses?
Yes. And you know what? That was an issue sometimes, especially, like I said, with my father being an elder of the congregation. We had pretty strict limitations at that time, because this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there were some eyebrows being raised, what are they doing in their life? Have you talk to them about coming, into the religion? Are you preaching to them? And it's like, it was uncomfortable in a sense, like, this is my family, like, I don't want to have to put on the, skirt and, and get my, awake and have to preach to them. I get that their intention was pure of like, okay, well, it would just be best if, you try to at least get something across to them and see if they would be willing to convert, come over. I get that, but it was just very uncomfortable for me. And they wanted me to do that with the younger kids, because like I said, there were no real younger children at the time that I'm referring to when we were in our congregation. So it just, I mean, I was 9, 8.
Right.
You know, I'm like, what do you want me to say? I'm just learning how to form real sentences.
Go out and recruit a whole village. And we were from a village, right?
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
But you know what I found too to be interesting about it is because the area where we live, where we're from, is such a small area, and people knew our grandparents, and they weren't witnesses, and that was a struggle for me. You know, growing up in this town, and you know, when I used to come and visit every summer before my dad retired from the military, and we moved back home, I used to play with those kids in the summertime.
Right.
Because we stayed with your grandmother for the summers.
Ah, right. Okay.
And she was not a practicing witness at the time. And so we basically, because your grandmother had gotten baptized years ago, but then she never went back to the meetings for a long time. So when we would go home, we would stay at your grandmother's house. And the people that we hung around with were not Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
So when we finally moved back to Michigan, what ended up happening was we are now practicing. My mom is like, she's there and we're going to meetings and things like that. So these same kids that knew us as just regular kids is now seeing me in school, not saluting the flag. Yes. That was a struggle for me.
Yes.
Now, yeah. What about you? When it was going to school, like, did you go to school? Did you go to the school, the local school?
Now, I was homeschooled from 4th grade and up.
Okay.
So I did get a taste of public school. And you know what? That triggered a lot of emotions for me in public school because I felt so secluded. And now here I am again. I can't fit into my congregation. I can't fit into my school. Where do I find it? Because now it's like when Halloween, Valentine's Day, Christmas parties, I have to isolate myself and go in the library and sit there. And this is before technology, before, you know, it was just sitting in a library, picking a book and reading it while everybody else. And, you know, there were some really awesome teachers that would still put some candy aside for me and just say, here you go, honey, just take it. It's okay. It's okay. You know, because they knew in a sense, but it was very, very, very hard for me to connect with worldly children outside of the congregation because I was either getting picked on for being a witness, you know, because they look at you as like, oh, and you're homeschool, what, you're a witness and homeschool, what is this, you know? And then they're asking me, hey, come trick or treating with us. And I'm like, I can't, you know, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. What? Oh, really? You're one of those? And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm still trying. I'm like, wait.
Like you're a Martian from outer space, right?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. So yes, when I was younger, that was the biggest struggle in my neighborhood because that's how I had to hang out with people once I became homeschooled and get to know people, is hanging out in my community and getting to know those kids because I kind of stayed in touch with some from elementary school growing up.
Okay.
But yeah, that was really tough on me emotionally, not being able to feel like I could really, truly make any friends.
Right. How did that affect your decisions? Like with you being homeschooled and you're not in the public school where they're able to measure your academic progress. And then all of a sudden you're like homeschooled now. So how did this affect you going to college?
Well, you know what? Actually, homeschooling did help me with college because I ended up graduating about 3 years earlier. So I did go ahead and still go to college. Now, did I have the support from the congregation to do that? Not necessarily. It was just more so frowned upon. It's not like they told me, no, you cannot go, you have to stay here. It was at that time, school was a distraction. School was you not being able or being able to make the worst connections, you know, with worldly people and things like that. So luckily, I was still able to go to college. I had parents, that were supportive of that journey and said, no, you do have to make something of yourself. So we are going to allow that. But that was still a weird transition because I was young, going into college and then explaining to people too, even in college, that I'm a Jehovah's Witness. So there's things that I can't really do. I'm sorry, I can't hang out with you. So now, once again, in another cycle of life, and I cannot connect with people.
Exactly. Now, when you, I know how studious your mom was, and she was really into, get into the books. And I know I had heard and spoken to her about how you guys did things that the average homeschool children didn't do. Were you guys able to connect with other homeschool kids?
The program that we were with, no, we weren't really connecting. Once again, back then we had VHSs and there was no FaceTime. There was no, and chat rooms weren't a thing yet.
Right. No Facebook, no social media.
Yeah. There wasn't, it was like, if the school that we were with, the company that we were with, maybe had some type of random mixer, you could go to, but that was always in another state. So it wasn't even like it was anything local. So yeah, we had no way of even connecting with other homeschool children. And ironically, eventually, once more kids came into the Kingdom Hall, they weren't even homeschooled.
Oh my goodness. So what made you guys get homeschooled? What happened that you ended up getting homeschooled?
My mom just kind of thought, let's give it a try and see how it works, because at that point she had been staying home. She was a stay-at-home mom. And I think it was just something that she had read about and was intrigued on seeing how it worked. My older brothers, they eventually went away to public school. So they did end up, once they got to high school, they were able to continue that journey. With me, I just stayed homeschooled. And it got to a point too where I said, okay, well, I'm 15. I only got a couple more credits to finish, and then I'm done with high school. I'm graduating. So if I go back to public school, I'll be held back, still in the same grade, but held back from what I've already achieved during homeschooling.
Well, do you think that you would do that again, knowing what you know now?
No. I personally, I did not like homeschooling. Now, and this is my own personal experience I'm sharing, because for me, it was, once again, not finding anywhere to fit in. So it was like, now here I am being secluded even more. I felt like I need to meet people. I need to make friends. And now, still, even as an adult, I feel like I just am incapable of connecting and making genuine friendships. But also, it was amazing because we were still in sports, which back then you weren't allowed to participate in social activities like that at all.
Right.
My father wasn't really on board with it, but he supported. And my mom was full on, board with it. Look, my middle brother, he went and played, basketball and sports. My older brother, same thing. I did dance.
Okay.
So I did get some interaction too, once again, with other girls, but these girls all went to school together. Their parents all know each other. So how am I making a connection?
You know what? That is so true. I interviewed another young lady who told me the same thing. She said, I would go to the mall and I would see people like strolling their babies and stuff. And they went to school together and they had made memories and bonded. Mm-hmm. And they remembered her, but they had no connection.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's really hard.
It's very hard, to the fact that now I'm 31 years old. And it's trickled into my adulthood where I still feel alone. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to just necessarily only pin that on the religion, but because of being a witness, I had no choice but to be secluded from certain people and from certain things. And it just gradually took over my life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, it was the culture. See, that was all by design. So, when you're in the religion, a lot of times, and you were very fortunate that you did have a balance with both of your parents, where your dad wasn't quite on board, but your mom was like, oh, let the kids do it. Because my dad was not a witness when I was growing up, because of course he was in the military. But my mom, she was a Jehovah's Witness, and she was really all for these, whatever the Watchtower said we couldn't do, holidays, birthdays, things like that. She wouldn't let us do those. But like with you, like yourself, we were able to participate in sports and stuff like that. I was in a dance class as well for about 4 years when I was in junior high and high school. But it was like, man, we got to do some things to connect. But even given all of that, I still don't connect with the people I went to high school with. Because they looked at me as the crazy Jehovah's Witness girl.
Yes. Now I have a question for you. So because I know I dealt with this, because we were so balanced, do you feel like people in the congregation kind of looked at you differently because you had that balance of both worlds? Because that happened to me. They kind of looked at us like, you're kind of teetering a little bit.
Yeah, and see, my situation is a little different because, see, my early days of being in this religion was when we were traveling around to the military bases. And so the military base was always located where people could not get on that base if they didn't have an ID card. So we couldn't always go out. It was almost like we were secluded. And the people at the Kingdom Hall didn't know that I was playing sports, because the school I went to, we played our sports in the last 2 classes of class, right? So like if you had electives and you had your last 2 hours of class, that's when we would break and go play our sports. We would we would be bused to other schools. I was in Arizona at the time, but we would be bused to other schools and we would go play sports, but they allowed us to play the sports during the school. And then my mom let me join a baseball team or softball team for 4 years. I did that 4 years straight. And we did that, the congregation that I was in Arizona, they did not want the young kids going out on Friday night. And so they had the theocratic school and service meeting on Friday night. So where most people were doing either a book study or the theocratic school on a Tuesday or Thursday, we were out playing baseball, because our theocratic school and service meeting was on a Friday, and I think our baseball was like Thursday night. So it would have been, normally we would have been at the theocratic school, but they freed that night up for me. So
yeah. Now, well, see, it was different for me because my dad didn't give us any days off, and as I would assume, he's an elder. You know what I mean? So he has a reputation to uphold as well. But we had no days off. So we would go, we had your Sunday meetings, then book study on Monday, and then theocratic school on Wednesday. Well, Tuesday and Thursday, we would have family study. Then Friday, we needed to study our Watchtower, highlight our answers, go through like a fine tooth comb. And Saturday comes, then it's time to go out in field service. And then I was also telephone witnessing too. I don't know if you had ever.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was pioneering, I did do telephone witnessing. Yeah.
Okay.
I had that same schedule you had.
Okay.
It's just that when I was a kid, my mom let me be a kid.
Okay.
So she would go out through the week out in field service. And we only were expected to go out on the weekend. And it was like that because my mom was a stay-at-home mom too. And so for her to go all the way into, because we went to the Chandler congregation in Arizona.
Okay.
So in order for her to drive all the way to Chandler, and she would be out with the Pioneer sisters during the day, she wasn't about to come back home and go get us to go back out in service.
Yeah, probably no way.
So we could not do any preaching on base. So I think that so when I went to in answering your question, we didn't get the blowback because because the friends weren't in our business. They couldn't get on base to see that we had worldly friends.
Gotcha. So Yeah, see, with my dad being the elder, we went to multiple different congregations. So there wasn't one congregation that didn't know us.
Okay.
They all knew us. There was no way of getting out of it whatsoever. Like they will, any town. I mean, we were even going over to Canada.
Oh my.
Frequent. So yeah, there was just anywhere you went, they all know you. We go to assemblies, conventions coming up, and I don't know who these real, I don't really know who these people are because we just go and support and whatever. But there are all these different people are coming up, and they know, and it intimidates you,
right?
And it puts you in a little bubble, like, oh, okay, now I got all these eyes everywhere. Oh no, what do I do?
Exactly. Oh, so I see what you're saying. Because see, like if I'm playing with one of the little kids in my neighborhood, you knew that there were no other Jehovah's Witnesses on base. Because if there were other witnesses on base, you would have known that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Not saluting the flag,
Right.
So they would never know that I was making mud pies with little Sally next door or whatever, But when you're out, when my dad was not a witness anymore, not a witness, when my dad was no longer in the military, then now we're out in the neighborhood and now people can see you. But by that time, I'm just getting ready to, I only got 2 more years of high school to go at that point.
So you were, like, okay, well, whatever.
I was well indoctrinated. I knew my limitations and different stuff like that.
Yeah. And so as I got older too, it actually got worse for me to be able to connect with the kids my age because so much time had passed, right? And they really know how our family operates and how they give us balance of both worlds. It got to a point where I wasn't allowed to hang out with like certain kids in the congregation anymore.
Oh.
They just said she's, bad influence. And
they said that about you?
Yeah. They said, and I was only 15. Like what influence? I didn't even have a license. What influence was I going to be at that point? In my mind, I said, I'm just young. But part of my homeschooling curriculum was watching the news and being invested in politics. So they did not like that. Let me tell you, because this is when Bush was in office. So, I had some political views back then. They didn't like that. I knew. They're like, wait, how does she know? Why is she so invested? And this was also around 9/11 too, I want to say. So, it was a huge event going on. So of course but that was part of my school curriculum that my mother had written out for me. She said, look, you have to know what's going on in the world. Okay. I'm not going to completely shield you. Just use your common sense, of what you should be watching, what you shouldn't be watching, and what you should know. Because once again, back then the news wasn't as crazy as it is now.
Right.
But yeah, so they did not like that I knew, things.
Like your mom had you, getting with the news and the politics, and you were coming to the Kingdom Hall like, this is such and such and such,
Oh, I was excited. And I had no idea.
Smart. See, okay, so now that was smart of her to do that, because if you were going to school in the regular public sector, you would have been learning government.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
I have government.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So, right. She was just trying to give me all the normal curriculum as she could have that I would have gotten in school. So when they found out that, we were getting homeschooled, oh yeah, they were excited. They were really excited. You know what I mean? Okay. And then once they found out, okay, well, wait a minute, they're playing sports. They're learning about politics. They're playing instruments that are not being used for, our events. What sense does that make? So
oh my goodness,
it was hard in that aspect of just trying to, like, who am I really struggled very hard finding my identity of who I am. And once again, I don't want to completely blame that just solely on being a witness, but it did contribute to me trying to figure out who I am.
Did you find that any of our family looked at you and thought you should be doing more in the religion, and they may have, like, stop talking to you as much as they could have, or,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't talk to my dad currently because of that, but
oh, your dad is shunning you, or is he shunning you?
Pretty much, because my husband's not in the truth. So, he didn't really support that. He just had his hopes up that, maybe eventually I would come back. Maybe, I would rethink certain choices, and I get it. And now I would go to the memorial every year. I would take my daughter, and I would still go to the memorials every year. I don't know why. It just felt like I was doing something right, I guess, by still going, and it was connecting me with God, and it made my dad happy. So that was the number one reason, I would go. And, my grandmother, she just kind of like looks at us like, I'm gonna let y'all do whatever you want to do, whatever, I'm gonna let it go. But she gives us the side eye, like, I'm watching you guys. But she, kind of just lets us be who we are.
Yeah, but is it a normal relationship though? Do you think you should have a more close relationship
with my father,
your mom, your grandma?
Definitely. And I feel like because of the religion that caused a little bit of wedge in between us, because when she first moved to Michigan, back from living here in Arizona, and she had lived with us, I was still going to the meetings with her. I was going out in field service. I was driving her around. I was doing all of that. And I really felt connected with her at that point. And I said, okay, so this is how I'm going to have a relationship with you. And I was still young. I was 17, I want to say. So I was still young. It didn't bother me, at that time. And that's the age, though, that I was slowly creeping out, because a lot of our family stopped going around 2005. A lot of our family stopped going. And so I just kind of wanted to still be able to talk to my family and be around them. So I said, whatever it takes, if I got to be the loner here, I will be. But yeah, not too much of the family really that I disconnected with. It was more so just my grandmother and my dad that are still very heavily involved in it. And I just feel some type of disconnect.
Well, I don't want to mention her name on the platform, but I'll just say that one of my aunts, actually, when she died, she was shunning me for like maybe 4 years before she died.
Wow.
So, and my dad was so hurt by that. He goes, I knew her ever since she was 9 years old. He goes, I gave her away at her wedding. She came to live with us. That's how she found, her husband. I was the flower girl in her wedding. Her daughter was the flower girl in my wedding. And it was like, oh my God. And so she just stopped, talking to us about 4 years before she died. And it was really sad because she was helping me get through my mom's illness. I would call her, we would talk for hours and stuff. And then one day she saw that my dad was friends with a sister that was disfellowshipped. And I think she found out that we were on our channel, and she just said, she just abruptly just unfriended us on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
And when we would call home to talk to her husband, she would let him talk to us for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got to the point where he had to hide to speak to us. So he could not talk openly with us on the phone. And if he would be at the hospital with her, he would go into the parking lot and call my dad and say, hey, how you doing? And stuff like that. But it got to the point where he's, and the reason why I'm saying this is because, he's not baptized.
Right,
And so
right.
here he is, a man who never became a witness, never believed in the witnesses, but yet his Jehovah's Witness wife had that much control over him to the point where he couldn't talk to us if she knew it. So
Wow. Yeah, and that's how dark it gets for people. Personally, like my friends, I've seen them really reach some dark spaces because of, those situations. I am one of the lucky few that I know I have a great support system in many different aspects of my life. So I'm lucky in that way. But yes, I have, just like your situation, I have seen my friends completely go left because of being shunned, because they have nowhere to go, because, now they're getting kicked out by family. Well, figure it out. If you don't want to believe what I believe, get out. And that just results in the worst of things. I've seen a lot of my friends just go down the extreme wrong path of life, or they pass away.
goodness. Oh, so you've
Yeah.
seen people pass, you've seen some deaths?
Yeah, I've had about three suicidal deaths.
Suicides?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
And so four. One was drug related, and then the rest were suicides.
What do you think their issues were?
I know for a fact their issues were that they couldn't rely on their family or their friends, completely isolated them. And now, and they've been sheltered their whole life. They've never gotten the balance like like we were brought up with. So now they get out into this world and they're like, oh, ooh, drugs, alcohol, sex, parties, and they overload on it. So because they're trying to fill a void of missing their family and everything else. I mean, I had one friend that he kept trying to get close with his family. Even though, he was disfellowshipped and everything, he still, till this day, will not give up hope that they will come back and talk to him. And it's just sad because he's, completely just down the wrong path in life right now too. But I see that he still has that hope in his heart that maybe one day they will come around. And this has been going on 15 years. So it's just sad, that it gets that bad that people in their head think, okay, well, I have nowhere to go. I have no friends. I have no family. I have no support. Where do I go? They don't know. So their instance is, okay, well, I'm going to go out and party and see, what the worldly life is like. And then they get caught up with the wrong people because they don't have that guidance of, that's not your friend. Those people are not here for you. They're, you know what I mean? And so it's very, very hard watching my friends just deteriorate in life because of a religion. It's really sad. And I've gone to more funerals than I've ever thought that I would because of that. And now being a witness did bring me into a level of depression at some point, but the religion never pushed me to that point where I said, okay, I need to do this, that, and the other. It was other aspects and other things in my life that made me go down a path that I did, because I got into the party life really hard. I was a heavy binge drinker, just, doing a lot of things, hanging out with the wrong crowds, but that had nothing to really do with the religion. But I knew how to get out of it. I had the capability to know, okay, all right, Janelle, we going a little too deep now. Let's reel it in. And let's get your life together. But my friends they don't have those resources. And when they hear stuff from their peers, it's just not as comforting as your mom, your dad, your grandparents, just, people that you're comfortable with. It's just not the same.
Right. So what do you think? So you said you don't think that you going out partying had anything to do with your upbringing. You just wanted to just go hang out?
Yeah, I mean, it was a combination of a lot of things. It was my depression. Like, I felt like I had to drink and party and go hard to forget about any of the things that have happened. So with the religion, I don't know if I'm, going too deep, but I mean, there were a couple instances of, brothers just inappropriate things that they would do to me. I had approached my dad about it. He didn't really care because he's in such a high position. What is he going to say? What is he going to do? So that kind of triggered it. I would start to remember some things of, being out in service or being in the hall and these brothers and the things they would say or do to me. And I was only 11, 12 years old.
Were they older? Were they,
Oh, they were old. They were too dang old. They were at least over 50 years old.
Quit.
Easily. So
Oh,
it was probably about four of them.
Were they known for this with other people? Just
now I just found out, yes, that they were. But it's really alarming that I was that young. And I'm being told how I'm developing nicely and and there was touching and things like that. And it was just, basically walking through those doors brought me PTSD, made me have anxiety every single time. I hated sitting alone because around 2006 and up, once I said, that was when everybody left. My brothers, my mom, my aunts, like everybody was out.
right.
So it was just me and my dad. That's it. No one else. And we had switched congregations too. So it was really just me and him. So I'm sitting around, just anxious all the time. And then when the meeting would end, I always would rush to the car. Never wanted to stay, hang out, talk to anybody. I would just go and sit in the car. I really would be in tears, begging, please, I don't want to go out in field service. I don't, because they would leave me in the car alone.
With those brothers?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would be left alone a lot with these brothers in the vehicle. And it was just very, very, very uncomfortable. And then that's when I started noticing, okay, if I use my voice and I start talking about topics they don't like, that's when I started bringing that stuff up. That will make them mad. That will back them up off of me. And they'll realize that I have a lot of knowledge. So that was a triggering thing, because I would have nightmares about it and think about it. And I'm being forced to face my predators, my offenders, 4 times a week. It's exhausting. And I kept that in. I didn't even tell my dad until 2 years ago about that. I just had told my mom 3 years ago. I never said anything because I subconsciously knew the outcome already of not having any support. So it was my word against theirs. And these are elders. So what are they really going to say? What are they really going to do when they have such high power? There was nothing I could have said or could have done that they would have believed me. And I did not wear makeup.
Okay.
Nothing, but I was just developing and, putting their hand down my dress or anything. It was just wild. And it was just shocking. So you don't know, you freeze, in that sense, because you're wait, did that just happen? Who do I go to? Who do I tell? No one. So I bottled that in for many, many, many years. And yeah, that definitely was one of the triggers for me kind of falling off the deep end. And let me tell you, I was drinking 6 days a week.
Oh my God. Really?
6 days a week, heavily. And from probably about 10 a.m. until about 3 a.m.
Whoa. See, yeah, I think that what happened to you with the abuse that you experienced contributed to that.
Yeah, it definitely can. It's one of those things I, tuck away and don't really try to overanalyze it, because then I'll really have to think too much about it. Yeah. But yeah, it was, I started drinking when I was 16.
Okay.
So, it was around that time, I'm okay. And it began just sneaking a little sip of something here. And then I'm oh, I like how I feel and how I'm forgetting things. So when I'm talking to my peers that are looking for a way out, or they don't know what to do, or they're torn. I try to give them that example, like there's a way to limit yourself and to know that, okay, maybe this isn't the path that I want to go down. Now, mind you, it took me about 8 or 9 years to finally stop. It wasn't even after I had my kid, like after I had my daughter, I still continued, partied, drinking, everything. It just became that it started getting so bad, and having some questionable nights that I said, okay, I'm really on the brink of death. Like, something's got to change. I've got to figure out something. In the industries that I was working in, they promote that. I'm in the restaurant industry. I was in the party industry because I had worked for a lot of nightclubs and things like that. So that was really, that's just what you do. That's your life, but I just wanted to show, my friends that I've seen growing up and my peers, like, it gets better. I promise you, after all this trauma that you go through, don't let your trauma become who you are.
Right.
Be above it. Because that's what they want. They want to shrink you down. Those people that cause you that trauma want you to shrink, want you to feel like you need them, like you can't succeed in life without any of these tools, these wonderful tools that I got. I found out how to be successful in life after I left the truth. I didn't get any tips and tricks.
You keep calling it the truth. Now, do you realize that this is not the truth anymore? Because I'm gonna get people.
That's true.
Saying, why does she keep on saying it's the truth? Because so I'm just saying. So
it's such a habit.
You want to talk about, whether you still think it's the truth or not, and if you don't, how did you find out that it's not the truth?
Oh, I guess just from life experiences, because then I started going and comparing what I read. Now, this is also a funny fact too. So when I was younger, that's when MySpace was around. Okay. We had gotten pulled in the back so many times about having social media, that is not a good thing. You could be easily distracted, yada, 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 right? But now look at how they are today. They've got dating apps, they've got social media pages, they've got everything and above. We were just ahead of our time. So it's just ironic that I didn't learn a single thing from there, because then we're being told, don't get a job. If you're a woman at this time, you don't need to work, just stay at home. And that's what the publication actually said. Front blank center, that working and going to school is pointless, pretty much. So I was just curious. And my mom just didn't want that for us. She wanted us to have that education, that knowledge, and to make something of yourself. So I was lucky enough to have that push. Like, no. I hear what they're saying. I understand, what they might be trying to get across, but that's not what we're going to do. You're not going to tell me how to raise my kid. That's one thing.
Right.
I said, we pray, we practice, we're here, we're, participating, we're doing what we need to do. But you're not going to say that we shouldn't do these other things. So it wasn't until I had to dive into it, actually going to college, doing dance, all those things, that I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I really do enjoy this. I don't know what was so bad, because if anything, I said, I've been seeing my peers getting disfellowship for way worse than what I'm seeing out here in the world.
Right.
It was just ironic.
Right. Have you done your actual research about this religion?
I haven't dug any deeper since I have left. Now, I've worked with a few witnesses in a previous job, and they kind of would tell me how it is nowadays. And I'm just like, it seems a little bit more lenient than when I grew up. That they're a little bit more, this much more understanding to things that we got in trouble for. So I'm not really too familiar with what it is as of now. Beyond 2009, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And what I mean by that is we're talking about like double clicking on, if someone were to come to you, if things were to change in the organization, would you go back?
No.
Okay.
No. As they've really personally deterred me from any organized religion. I talk to God every single day. I thank him for everything. That is my homie. Okay. But as far as like stepping foot in another organization, it will make my anxiety go through the roof all over again.
Okay. So you're not interested in organized religion?
No. I have my own personal relationship with my Lord and Savior, and I feel like that's good enough. I'm blessed every single day. I pray every single day. I talk to God every single day. That doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. I love God and I love everything that it represents. I'm very God-fearing, very. And that was only from a very bad accident that had happened. And I was just like, God doesn't care. I'm over it. Spewing off a bunch of God hate stuff. And let me tell you, some really bad stuff like in a row happened after I said that. And I said, oh, this is what they mean by being God-fearing. Like, you need to fear the big man up there, okay?
Oh my goodness. Kept you on the straight and narrow, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for my peers and people that are in it now, and even the young women that I had met that are in it now, and I've talked to them, I'll say the same thing, that it's up to you first and foremost. What do you feel like you want to do? Do you want to continue in this? Do you see that you could reach your goals in life? What are your goals? What do you want for your life? Because I see you going to the meetings, but then I also see you out at the bar.
Oh no.
And less clothing, okay? And getting your groove on, Stella got her groove back. So do you really want to be
living a double life, right?
Yes. I see it more. I see it more now with the more recent witnesses that I run into than back then. Like, it was very taboo to see people living double lives, but I see it a lot more. And that's what's going to make you go crazy and insane. You got to pick one. Right. You have to pick one. And it just seems like they don't want to be in that. They're doing that to please other people. And you cannot always make everyone happy. Right. And I'm a great example, because, not to pat myself on the back, but I got out of it. I made a successful food, private chef, catering business. I didn't let it hold me back from chasing my dreams. I've raised a beautiful daughter. I have a beautiful marriage. There's things that can transpire positively from you leaving there. It doesn't always have to be negative. And nowadays, like this, there's support groups. There's people out there that can have your back and explain to you like what their process was, or be there to help you. Absolutely. There's ways. It doesn't have to go so far left.
True. That is so true. And I think that, like in your own case, you had your own experience that you lived through. So you're not like, oh, learn life lessons without going through the experience. You've been through the experience, but you're also able to tell other people that experience is not always worth it. No, it's not. And I see more people traumatized by it than more people happy and feeling free in it. Mm-hmm. So that just kind of, breaks my heart. And I have a few of my witness friends. We all grew up together and we are still heavily in communication. We're both out and we heal with each other. We talk through it because we've been through it. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, you could go to therapy. Yes, for certain things, I would suggest that.
But first, I believe that you should talk to somebody who's been in and out of that religion and see what kind of guidance they can give you first. And if you're not satisfied with that, then definitely seek therapy, seek help. It's okay. It is okay to do that too. You need to heal your mental health. And I see a lot of people, it's doing damage to their mental health instead of uplifting and being happy and being joyous and spiritual and, rejoicing, whatever. But
what I'm gonna say to you though is I feel like, because, we really haven't gone and drilled into like why we actually left. And I'm not sure how many of our videos you've had a chance to watch, but I recommend Crisis of Conscience by Raymond Franz, he was an ex, governing body member, because when you begin to talk to your friends and even yourself, when you know where you've been, you truly know where you're going, because now not only are you more in tune to what this religion was not, okay, then you can actually help other people to start saying, I see you going to the meeting and I see you at the club, but have you read Ray Franz's book? Because I think reading that book is going to help them to understand why they're at the meeting and at the club. It's going to hopefully wake their eyes up to see you don't have to be at the meeting.
Correct.
Because you're going to the club because you don't want to be at the meeting. You want to do other things, but it ain't even about the club. It ain't even about, I got to go to the meeting and in my spare time, I want to go have fun with my friends. But if you really knew the truth about the religion, you would have a whole different attitude about life. Because even your decisions in employment, education, and all that will change. And I'm one of these people that I kept saying, get your education. I still agree with that. But don't get your education to the tune of $100,000 later. No. Do your community college, or even just do a certification, because it's changing now. I don't want to wake up and say, oh God, I got to go get this degree. And then this for-profit college is trying to get me sucked in to all this debt, but I really, really recommend to read that book, Crisis of Conscience by Ray Franz, because it's going to really tell you what this religion was all about. It's going to help you appreciate why your dad is still there, why your grandmother is still there, why our aunt started shunning me, because they believe this is the truth and the only way to God. But when you read that book, you're going to find out they played us like a fiddle.
Absolutely.
It's pretty bad what they did to us,
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot to overcome. It's a lot to, process. And that's why I stress enough, people, take your time. Don't rush. Take your time to make your decision and see what you want to do. And like you said, read that book clearly, because it sounds like it's covering some wonderful topics to help you through it.
It will. So, so you're new at this. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of people that we would just call walk-away believers, or people that walk away and they don't know the real truth about this religion, and then what happened is you meet a whole new crop of witnesses and they're like bumping bad. I like them. Oh, they cool.
Right.
Go back to the hall because I like this group of people. So that's why I tell people, make sure you do your whole homework to understand why the religion does what they do. Because the time that my grandfather took this religion back in, this would be your great-grandfather, when he introduced the family to this religion, my mom was a young girl. And he did not get baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses until he was like 72 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But he introduced the religion to the family. And like that, my mom and everybody, they were like 1975 generation, like, oh, the end of the world's going to come in 75. We got to get baptized.
Yeah.
They studied in the 60s, 70s, and then they got baptized, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I'm saying. So bottom line is, when this religion came about during the time that our grandfather was a Jehovah's Witness, do you know that this is a whole different religion now? It's not the same.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I think it's wonderful that you are where you are and everything. And I think some of your aspirations in going to school, would I be correct to say that it had something to do with the religion that you chose to be a chef? Or what was that? Is that safe to assume?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly kind of one of the safer routes only. And I say that because it was, I was just more comfortable with that. I couldn't really figure out adjusting into the world. Like, what am I going to do?
Right.
I have no idea, because I said nursing, no. And I was going to a community college. So it was either the nursing program or the culinary program, or you just get your general studies. So, I mean, yeah, you definitely can go and just get your general studies, and that can get you in, basically anywhere. But I chose culinary because it was kind of a safer route. I wasn't too sure what to do. And I had cooked a little bit. I had grown up cooking for the book studies. Yes. And them coming over our house and everything like that. So it was great that I had a little bit of that, experience. I had the comfortability of talking to people. Mm-hmm. That's what I think the religion for, is making me comfortable to approach strangers.
Right. But that's
that's great for marketing.
Exactly. But see, my thing is there were other disciplines at that college, but you had been trained to believe that the system was about to end. And so to go off and be an accountant or a scientist and take classes that's related to that type of stuff, they steered your thinking away from those topics.
Yeah, they say, the greed, they don't want you to make, this amount of money. And that was funny too, because as soon as I started coming to congregations out in Arizona, when I would visit my grandmother, these people were living in $600,000 houses. How are you affording that? And I mean like 80% of the congregation, they were all rich, well off, don't know how, because I thought that was frowned upon. Like, here I am comfortably living in a double wide, and you guys are out here traveling and going, across the country and living in these mansions and doing all these things. So that's another reason I kind of downplayed as well, even what I was going into, and making sure that it wasn't something so extreme, because of just routine and it getting in my head. Like, okay, I just need to pick something safe, something that, it's cooking. How bad could it be? So yeah,
it was safe. They can't, you can't get in trouble with that, right?
Right.
Right. I heard a lot of people were doing like those kind of, if they were going to school, they were doing something safe, like culinary, like auto mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Secretary. Like when I was going to school, it was safe to be a secretary.
Yeah.
So that's what I went to school for, to be a secretary.
And the funny part is too, also, is that when I started working, when I got into the working field, in call centers, full of witnesses. Holy moly. Yeah, it was a lot of witnesses in the call center field, a lot of sisters. Every single call center job I got. Really? It was so weird. I don't know why. I really don't have any answers, but that was just funny to me too. I had to mention that as well. Like the career, the job path that I saw a lot of sisters going was call centers, and that was it, because they would work around their schedule, and they're more understanding about your religion too. So they'll respect that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I really appreciate, like I said, being that we're family, and finally, after all of the interviews I've done, actually going back home.
Yes.
Having my cousin on my platform to tell her story about what it was like growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I think it's really good that you had that balance, but you had some hiccups along the way. You're here looking good, telling your story. So obviously you learned something. And because you said you're not going back, you're going to read Ray Franz's book. I trust you're going to do that.
Yes.
But I really feel like it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing seeing somebody from our family that's taking that step out to come out and tell their story.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you having me to tell my story. And I hope I can touch some people, with what I said.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for being on the program. And this has been Lady C. And I'll see you on the next video.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Hidden Struggles with your host, Lady C. This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers, online at hiddenstruggle.com. Feel free to send an email to info@hiddenstruggle.com, and we'll catch you next time on Hidden Struggles. The views and opinions of our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Critical Thinkers.